All right, here we go. We were talking the other day,
Right,
and your hometown came up,
right,
and East McKessport,
right.
and
That vicinity.
yeah, in that area in 1954 when you left,
Right.
and then you went back 47 years later.
I went back once when we were having Jackie baptized in Pittsburgh before
Right,
we went to Germany. That was, I think, March or April 1964.
right,
And then the next time I went back to Pittsburgh was in 2001.
right,
We had talked, I joined Stentor in
right,
2001, and one of the main contributors to Stentor product was University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in Oakland,
right.
Pennsylvania, which is part of Pittsburgh.
And you got to spend some time there the second time in 2001.
2000, well, I made several trips to Pittsburgh after I was hired by Stentor. Um, and then, I went back and forth to Pittsburgh, but that was the first time I was back.
All right.
And I told you, uh, when I grew up,
Yeah,
I,
let's go back to 54.
so in 1954, 19, I turned 16 in October of 1954. I get sideways with my third high school, and I quit. This is probably end of November 54. Grandma had just gotten remarried. She asked me what I was going to do, and I told her I'm going to join the service. I'm going to join the Marine Corps. Um, and she said, "Well, I'll need to sign for you." I said, "Well, I want to go, so sign for me." She said, "Okay." But I even couldn't go at time, even if she signed for me. I had to be 17. So I doctored my baptismal certificate and used that to join the service, and she signed documents. In January 1955, one went off, and we've got the story
Right.
for those years. So in 2001, I go back to Pittsburgh. Well, let me go back again. So in that era, that period of time, in Pittsburgh, Swissvale, East McKessport, the places that I lived, most of the kids who got out of high school went into the service. Depending on what service they went in, they had a 3 or 4 year enlistment commitment. A good percentage of them went into the service, got a trade, because at that time you could sign up for different trades in the service, got out of the service. And if they had a trade, they went to work in the trade, or the mills were booming. Got out of the service, you had a job at one of the steel mills in Pittsburgh. So you went there. If you didn't go to the service, and the percentage of people going to college was probably 10, 15, 20%. It wasn't like today where everybody has to go to college or
Right.
think they do. So it was a lower percentage. So the guys who didn't go into the service, the majority of them went into the factories. They got out of high school and got a job at the mills. And so the mills were booming. If you lived in Pittsburgh and that area in the wintertime and it snowed, you get up in the morning, the snow had black soot all over it.
From the steel mills.
From the steel mills. Or in the summertime, you get out your car, if you had a car, would be covered in soot. So it was, the mills were throwing off. You could see it at night. It was bright. The skies were bright from flames coming from the mills.
And how would you describe the population in that area where you grew up at this time?
Well, again, I think it's a lot. It was a lot different then than it was today. You knew your neighbors. You actually talked to your neighbors. I think the majority of the people in Pennsylvania were patriots. The majority of people in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania were Union Democrats, including my family. And so it was just a different period of time. The city was
blue collar, white collar?
It was blue collar. Pittsburgh was blue collar. And so I go away for
47 years.
47 years, and I go back to Pittsburgh. And it was one of the people that I had hung out with in the last high school I attended.
First name
was Buddy. Okay. And Buddy and I were buddies, and we hung out together. And I went in the service And I believe he went into the service when he was old enough. I think he spent 2 years. I think his enlistment was 2 years or 3. I'm not sure. And anyway, he went back to Pittsburgh and went to work in the mills. And periodically we would touch base for whatever reason. And so I'm going back to Pittsburgh, and I get a hold of Buddy, and I said, "Hey, you wanna go out to dinner? I get done, we could meet for dinner and just catch up a little bit." And he said, "Great." So he came with his wife, and we had a good time, talked. But olden days.
Did you know the girl who was his
No,
wife
I
back
didn't
then?
know.
No.
I didn't know his wife. But he took me over to visit with his sister. I knew she was a couple of years younger than him. I had known her in high school, and as his house a lot, he was about my house a lot, so we knew each other pretty closely. But that I realized then, because I would drive. I had a car, rented car, and I would drive through the areas that I grew up in. Swissvale.
Did you still remember him?
Oh yeah, I could go back today if they haven't changed the roads and go wherever I need to go in Pittsburgh. But I went back, and I grew up in Swissvale, and Swissvale had a big factory called Switch and Signal during the war. My dad actually worked there. That was gone. And the city next to Swissvale was Rankin. Rankin was a blue-collar company. The majority of the people who lived in Rankin were black. But they were neighboring communities, so no big deal. And right next to Rankin was Braddock. Braddock was sort of an up-and-coming city at that time. The main street was lined with stores, mom and pop stores, everything you can imagine you could buy. There wasn't the big box stores and everything then. It was still mom and pop stores. You bought stuff. And the mills were 1 or 2 streets behind the main street in Braddock, and they went the whole distance of the city.
Now, were the mills on the water?
Mills were all on the river.
And what river is that?
There was 2 rivers, the Monongahela and the Allegheny, and they formed the Ohio at the other end. But either side, if in Swissvale was on the Monongahela, and you could go at the end of Swissvale and look across over past the river and see the mills. In McKessport, East McKessport, where I went up to live with my aunt, there again up on the hill, you look across the hill, mills everywhere you looked. Braddock mills. So I go back in 2001, mills are gone. Braddock is a ghost town. There's nothing there.
Were you shocked?
Yeah, I was shocked. And Fetterman was the mayor, the senator from Pennsylvania.
Oh, is that right?
Was the mayor of Braddock. Not at that time, but
right.
Later on. But he was the mayor of when the city, it was in ruins. I mean, not ruins, but it was in poverty for sure. And the feeling to me was that the whole city was defeated. That there was a lot of people unemployed. Buddy had lost his job. He was my age, so 62, 63, probably 60 when he lost his job. I mean, they got some union monies and stuff.
Right.
And his wife was working, so they were doing okay, but there was didn't appear to me that there was any juice to go do something different. And if you went through some of the suburbs like Braddock and Rankin and Swissvale, people weren't working, so there was no taxable revenues coming into the city, so they were really able to do much at that time. So I just thought, this place is depressing. I mean, I felt depressed.
Right.
And when you go back to Texas and California and other places where technology is booming and everybody's on the positive side, grow the economy, grow this, just didn't feel like that in Pittsburgh. Now, I could have been 100% wrong. I didn't go look up their economic stuff. And I think in the last 25, maybe even prior to that they've turned from a blue-collar steel mill, hardworking guys to more white-collar service industry stuff. And it's probably, I think that side of Pennsylvania is more on the conservative side still. So they've probably changed their politics a little bit.
Right.
But in general, Pennsylvania is still pretty democratic. And that came from the unions.
Right.
I mean, everybody was a member of the union. Every household everybody worked you worked in a mill, you were in the union.
When you went back in 2001, did you go look at any of your old houses?
I went back to the place that I lived in, Swissvale. The rest of them, I never stayed long enough to consider it my house.
Right.
In Swissvale, I think from 5 to probably 13, 12, 13, lived in the same house, went to schools with the same guys. And but yeah, no, it just, like I said, to me, in 2001, it looked like it was limping along, trying to figure out where it was going.
Yeah. Now, any of those people still around, Buddy or his sister?
I don't know about his sister. Buddy died maybe 10 years ago. Maybe he died shortly after.
After you visit?
After I visited him, I think he had some kind of cancer.
Oh.
So he didn't hang out too much longer after that.
All right.